EEA. Thank you for that. Representing Secretary Bethany Card, and we're here today to discuss the Mayflower Wind South Coast project in Somerset, and that is EEA number 16590. And I'll start with a brief overview of the MEPA process. The MEPA process applies to projects that meet or exceed MEPA review thresholds and involve a state agency action. For this project, the thresholds that were triggered according to the ENF are construction of an electrical transmission lines with a capacity of 69 or more kV, provided the transmissions lines are 1 or more miles in length along new, unused, or abandoned right-of-ways. And the environmental impact report, or EIR level threshold, is for alteration of 10 or more acres of any other wetlands. I'm sorry, 10 or more acres of BVW or any other wetlands, and disturbance for temporary disturbance of the ocean bottom. The permits required are a Chapter 91 license, 401 water quality certification, and dredge permit, a superseding order of conditions if orders from the local conservation commission are appealed. Also required are from the department, I'm sorry, all of those are from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, DPU, or the Department of Public Utilities, and the Energy Facilities Siting Board. Approval is required under MGL 164, sections 69J and 72, and Chapter 40A, Section 3, zoning exemption. Mass Historical Commission, there are field investigation permits, and coastal zone management will be doing federal consistency review. So MEPA requires that state agencies study the environmental consequences of their actions and take all feasible measures to avoid, minimize, and mitigate damage to the environment. MEPA review is the process providing the mechanism to achieve this. MEPA is not a permitting process and does not approve or deny projects. MEPA review occurs prior to state agency actions to ensure agencies evaluate all environmental impacts. The process is initiated by the submittal of an environmental notification form, or ENF, and at the end of the process, the secretary will issue a certificate that identifies whether the project complies with MEPA or if additional analysis is required. The purpose of the site visit is for me, agency officials, and the public to learn more about the project, to get a sense of existing conditions, what is proposed, potential impacts, measures that have been taken to avoid or minimize impacts, and mitigation where impacts cannot be avoided. Finally, in addition to public review, there is an opportunity for public comment. Comments for this project will be accepted in writing on or before September 29th, and comments can be submitted to me at jennifer.hughes@mass.gov or by Googling the MEPA comment portal and submitting comments on that online platform. The certificate will issue on October 11th. We'll provide that information again for public comments. Just a reminder, public comments do need to be in writing. So before we get started, I will just give the, well, actually, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathleen and Mayflower Wind, to introduce your team and start your presentation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathleen Freeman. I am the State Permitting Manager for Mayflower Wind. I'd like to start by thanking Jennifer at MEPA for hosting this virtual site visit and giving us the opportunity to tell you about our project. And thank you all, thank all of the attendees for your time and participation today. Today, we are joined by Jennifer Flood, our permitting director, by Kelly Smith, our onshore package manager, by Kelsey Perry, our community liaison officer, by Erin Healy, our marine science permitting manager, by Tim Ryer, our offshore package manager engineer. I hope I got that right, Tim. Did I miss anyone from the Mayflower team? And I apologize. Oh, Lahid Lee, our permitting analyst. Anyone else? want to announce themselves? Not hearing anything, we will proceed with the presentation. As you can see, this is our agenda today to give you a good project overview, tell you about the permitting that is currently underway and will be underway, tell you about our project. We're very excited about the South Coast project. You probably have been hearing from Kelsey about our project through what is it, the May 3D presentation and the January economic development presentation. So with that, why don't we turn to the next slide? So this is tell you about our Mayflower Wind. It's a 50-50 joint venture of Shell, New Energies, and Ocean Winds, specifically OW North America. And as such, Mayflower Wind is backed by the combined capability, experience, commitment to innovation, and financial strength of world-leading offshore wind energy developers with deep experience and capabilities in collaborating with communities and managing the complexities of offshore wind and onshore energy development projects. Next slide. Bob or Madeline, next slide, please. Now this slide provides you an overview of our lease area. Our lease areas in federal waters. It comprised of 127,000 acres, up to 149 wind turbine and offshore substation platform positions. It's located 51 nautical miles from the Rhode Island coastline, so it's fairly far out there. And the positions are laid out in a grid of 1 nautical mile by 1 nautical mile apart, which has been supported by the U.S. Coast Guard. The potential of the lease area, the full lease area, is estimated to be 2,400 megawatts plus or minus of total generating capacity. The project we will be focusing in on today with the ENF is the South Coast project with 1,200 megawatts, leaving another 1,200 megawatts of capacity. We have 2 points of interconnection, the one at Brayton Point in Somerset and one in Falmouth. These are separate and geographically distinct connector projects. Importantly, the 2 projects will each undergo separate and thorough environmental reviews under MEPA and through the Energy Facility Siting Board proceedings to minimize impacts to the maximum extent possible. However, we do have 2 projects, and Mayflower has committed considerable effort and funds into maturing studies, regulatory process, and developments for points of interconnection in Falmouth and in Brayton Point, and both continue to move forward. The reason why we need 2 interconnection points has to do with the ISO New England, the operator of the regional energy grid. They have reliability standards that require that no interconnection or project can be more than 1,200 megawatts for reliability reasons. So hence 2 connector projects. Next slide. The project brings substantial socioeconomic benefits. The Mayflower Wind South Coast project is a renewable clean energy project that will help make a significant contribution to Massachusetts' net zero emission goal with 1,200 megawatts of clean energy that will reach residents and businesses. The project will eliminate over 2 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually per 1,200 megawatts. If we build out the full capacity of the lease area, we're looking at over 4 million metric tons annually. 2 million metric tons, equivalent of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by more than 5 million miles driven each year. The offshore project will bring new job opportunities and save ratepayers over $2 billion over the life of the project, according to the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Resources. And energy cost savings help reduce the energy burden on low-income ratepayers. I should mention, I think many of you may be aware that last month on August 11th, Governor Baker signed into law an act driving clean energy and offshore wind, thus enacting what is considered to be the state's most comprehensive legislation on moving forward to the net zero goal by 2050. And the act sets the stage for Massachusetts to procure its planned 5,600 megawatts of offshore wind by 2030 and boosting its economy and employment. So this is a big deal. The act provides significant investment to advance the offshore wind industry in the state, and through offshore wind, the new law aims to spur the development of the supply chain, job creation, inclusivity, and environmental efforts. And this project is consistent with this new act signed by the governor. Next slide. Continuing on the benefits of the project, as you can see here, the Mayflower Wind Project will create it doesn't say it here, but over 14,000 full-time equivalent job years in Massachusetts and the surrounding region, and provide over 115 million in initiatives based on commitments made under the Massachusetts Offshore Procurement Awards. And this slide shows the breakdown between the 83C3 solicitation for 400 megawatts and the 83C2 solicitation for 800 megawatts. And the pie chart here provides a really good breakdown of where these dollars are going. You can see 8.5 million towards low-income ratepayer support, 3.9 million towards diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and 40 million towards offshore wind education, training, and workforce development. Big on jobs. Next slide. This slide is a diagram showing Mayflower Wind's project components and what elements will be cited in each jurisdiction. You can see the federal jurisdiction to the left is shaded gray, the Rhode Island jurisdiction in the middle is shaded blue, and then sort of a bluish gray to the right is the Massachusetts jurisdiction. The South Coast project includes everything from the wind turbines in federal waters all the way to the point of interconnection with the regional transmission system at Brayton Point, connecting to National Grid's 345 kV substation at Brayton Point. Within Mayflower's federal lease area, the turbines will be connected to the offshore converter platform that connects the power and converts it from alternating current to high voltage direct current and for long distance transmission to shore. So you go from, you can see on the chart, from 69 kilovolts of alternating current to 320 plus or minus kilovolts of direct current nominal voltage, and then coming ashore and at the proposed HVDC converter station, the power delivered will be converted again to alternating current to enable interconnection to the regional grid. The cables will make landfall at Brayton Point, where Mayflower's onshore electrical converter station will convert. I just mentioned that. And then the federal agency, the Bureau of Energy Ocean Management, reviews the entire project in detail. Mayflower's HVDC export cable system routes through Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So the feds take a more broad view of the project, whereas for purposes of this MEPA review, it's Massachusetts jurisdictional areas, which we will get into a little bit. Next slide. So this slide, for our coastal zone management folks who are on the line, this slide shows it provides an overview of the coastal zone management boundaries, and it gives a little history of our efforts. In February 2021, we filed a coastal zone management federal consistency statement along with the COP, the Federal Construction and Operations Plan. A revised version of the consistency statement was filed on January 13th this year. And in December of last year, Mayflower and Coastal Zone Management executed a 1-year stay where Coastal Zones Management's review would be restarting in December 30th of this year, with review completion anticipated in May 2023. Okay, next slide. This slide gives a nice overview of the offshore cable route to Brayton Point. You can see that the cable lengths, offshore cable, subsea cable is 90 miles in federal waters, 20 miles in Rhode Island waters, and only 2 miles in Massachusetts state waters, and no cable crossings are anticipated in Massachusetts state waters. It shows the export cable survey corridor going up the Sycamore River, crossing Aquidneck Island or Portsmouth underground, and then re-entering Mount Hope Bay. And Massachusetts has conducted detailed surveys of the corridor. That's about, as you can see, about 2,000 feet wide. Within the offshore corridor, the cables themselves are quite small, with a bundled width of just over a foot. As you can see in this diagram, there will be 2 power cables and associated communication cable or fiber optics cable, which is very small, you can see in the diagram. But again, the width of a bundled cable, where possible, will be about a foot in size. The cables, the industry practices are that we would fluidize a narrow strip of seabed and lay the cable and allow sediment to fall back in place to bury the cable. And that is where possible. The route was chosen after a careful study of alternatives. And I think that covers this one. Next slide. This slide provides a nice snapshot of the historic grid connection. Brayton Point provides an ideal location for interconnection because it has robust transmission infrastructure that has served a former power station. So the National Grid station is ideal for receiving delivery of offshore wind. And you can see here existing structure to the right. This is the 345 kV gas insulated station. Next slide. All right. This one shows delivering at Brayton Point. It provides a summary of our project. Routing is within existing previously developed or disturbed privately owned industrial areas within existing access roads to minimize environmental impacts. Our preferred route comes in on the western side of the peninsula through the Lee River, and is approximately, the export cable is approximately 0.6 miles. The sea to shore transition, which we will mention a little bit later, is by means of horizontal directional drilling and a length of about 0.3 miles. We are considering an alternate location on the eastern landfall side, but the western landfall side is our preferred route for a number of reasons. And then our onshore HVDC converter station, you can see it on this diagram. It's located on the Brayton Point property. The footprint of the converter station would be between 7 or 8 acres. The station itself would be about 10 acres when you add in fencing and storage areas. And again, this substation will convert high voltage direct current export cables to high voltage alternating current transmission circuit to connect to the national grid substation, the point of interconnection. Next slide. Again, this is a close-up diagram of our preferred route. You can see like the orange, that is the underground export cable to the greenish area, which is a schematic and an indicative drawing of our HVDC converter station. And then the blue line is after being converted to alternating current, that is the underground transmission line to the national grid station. And you can see in the picture, this shows in the foreground, the area of where we propose to construct the converter station. The preferred route avoids the main shipping channel in Mount Hope Bay and the shipping channel and turning basin located at the mouth of the Taunton River, which is our alternative landfall location. Okay, next slide. Federal permitting. Mayflower is in the process of permitting the development of a large-scale offshore wind energy generation resource capable of generating an estimated 2,400 megawatts of renewable clean energy. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management coordinates the federal permitting, but there are several permitting agencies that are involved. And BOEM serves as the lead for the one federal permit process. I think the point to take away from this is that we are stepping through a robust environmental and public engagement review process across our lease area development. We're looking at 60 permits with 30 agencies, federal, state, and local. And BOEM, while BOEM is looking at everything from the wind turbine generators in federal waters to the point of interconnection at Somerset, there are several other agencies that will be looking at the project. It's going to be a robust review. Next slide. And the next slide covers the state and local permitting, and it underscores what I just said about agency engagement. A lot of what's happening in Massachusetts is happening in parallel in Rhode Island. We've just in May, we filed our Massachusetts Energy Facility Siting Board petitions for Massachusetts, and also in May, we filed our application before the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board. And on August 12th, we filed our MEPA environmental notification form after waiting at least 45 days of doing prior or advance notice to the environmental justice populations. But there are a lot of state agencies that will be involved, and we have been engaged with Coastal Zone Management and Mass DEP and the Mass Historic Commission and the Board of Underwater Archaeological Resources, as well as the Division of Marine Fisheries and Mass Wildlife, the Natural Heritage Program, which has oversight for rare species. All environmental and fisheries issues are being reviewed by state regulators, as well as in parallel to the federal review process. Next slide. Okay, horizontal directional drilling. Our transition from sea to shore will be done by a trenchless method known as horizontal directional drilling. The beauty of this method is it avoids seabed and ground surface disturbance. And the use of our high voltage direct current cables reduces the number and size of HDDs that are required, which again reduces our environmental footprint. And as you can see, horizontal directional drilling goes deep, goes at least 50 feet or more at some point. And it avoids nearshore marine habitats, cable crossings, existing utilities. The cables will be located deep under the shoreline and protected from exposure by erosion. One of the problems with the Block Island cable was it was not installed by HDD, and the cables were later exposed. So this method is a proven method, and it's the only method we're using for coming ashore. Next slide. Okay, and this shows our plans to date, our 30% plans for our preferred landfall on the western side of Brayton Point, the Lee River HDD entry, and also gives you some photos of the area, man-made canal and armored bank with riprap and bulkhead on the western side provides protection from erosion due to wave action and storm surges, which that hardening makes it ideal. And you can see that this is a snapshot of where we, the lower picture snapshot of where we propose to do our HDD onshore. Next slide. Visual impact simulations. The project is isolated location on the Brayton Point Peninsula, physically separated, which physically separates the onshore project from other land uses and viewpoints in the area. As you can see, the proposed converter station is not even visible. The onshore project area would not be visible from most of the surrounding landscape. There may be some visibility from the water, the open water in Mount Hope Bay, but based on our visual assessments that we've done that are included with our federal construction and operations plan, about 84% of the area of potential visual impact is screened and will not be visible. So the converter station does have a lightning protection mast that's about 85 feet tall, and you can see it's like a stick. You can barely observe it from Somerset, the Brayton Point Beach. And we also have a visual on the next slide from Swansea. If you can go to the next slide. Visual impact of South Swansea from Sycamore Street. Again, virtually not visible. And our visual assessments are included with the federal COP and included with our filings. I should stress that our permit filings are available on our website. You just go to our website and click on the far left under documents. We're very transparent in providing our permitting filings for your review. Next slide. I should mention that in addition to our project, our preferred project, we are presenting a noticed variation, and the noticed variation is a design variation that proposes to put in spare conduit to accommodate the potential delivery of additional clean energy in the future and to minimize future disruption in environmental and cost impacts. And essentially it's 2 spare conduits, which will be hollow. There'll be no cables in them. And we would seek to construct these spare conduits if we see a clear path to using them for an additional project to deliver offshore wind renewable energy using the HVDC transmission. Again, it's a more efficient way of doing it. What the notice variation would mean is 2 additional HDDs at the transition points. And in terms of the duct bank for the underground export cable, the duct bank would be essentially the same width, but would be increase the depth by approximately a foot. And that is contained in our environmental notification form. Okay, environmental justice. Mayflower will comply with all applicable environmental justice requirements, including the new requirements under the 2021 Climate Act. Following MEPA's environmental justice protocols, we identified the EJ populations within 1 mile and 5 miles of the project site using the latest environmental justice mapper based on 2020 census data. This is all presented in our ENF. Our project does not exceed any MEPA ENF thresholds for air, solid, and hazardous waste or wastewater and sewage sludge treatment disposal. And the project is not reasonably likely to negatively affect EJ populations, nor does it have adverse environmental impacts or public health consequences for EJ populations. Rather, the project would have a significant economic and climate change mitigation benefit. The project involves the beneficial reuse of a former coal-fired plant site that historically had negative impacts on nearby EJ populations. And if you go to the next slide, we have a snapshot of the mapping for the 5 miles around the project site. Again, this is contained in our ENF, which is available on our website. There are 65 EJ populations within 5 miles of the project, none in the town of Somerset, 1 in the town of Swansea, 1 in the town of Westport, and the remaining 63 in the city of Fall River. And income is the biggest reason for the EJ designations, as you can see from the color coding here. Next, thank you. Now, we have done enhanced outreach to the EJ communities. We've done, as I mentioned earlier, the early notification to the EJ director and the EJ reference list that's provided by Meepa, and which we supplemented. That includes regional and statewide community-based organizations and tribes prior to filing our ENF, and then we waited at least 45 days before filing our ENF. We've done meaningful engagement with the EJ communities through our community meetings, as Kelsey has done most of these. We have an alternate language translator on our website. Our EJ screening form was translated into Spanish, Portuguese, and Cape Verdean Portuguese Creole based on the EJ mapping. On our website, we have project maps and fact sheets. And we continue engagement with local organizations to encourage feedback, and we track the feedback and we incorporate it into our planning. And here's like a little snapshot of, you can see our Mayflower website, project overview. You can see where there's a part you can click for documents, and then you can click under state permitting and pull up our state permit filings for your review. Next slide. Community outreach, we've done a ton of this. Kelsey, I don't know if you want to speak to this slide. I mean, this you're doing all the time. This is your pride and joy.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So of course, Mayflower is committed to facilitating meaningful outreach with all interested parties, including environmental justice communities, to participate in the project. We've been working with our host communities through consistent and transparent communications with town officials, meetings with local community members, either individually or in groups, and attending local events when we can. Through the COVID era, we have done a lot of virtual engagement. As Kathleen mentioned at the beginning, we've had 2 virtual open houses specifically for the South Coast community, one on economic development investments, another one which was hyper local for the Somerset and Swansea communities, where we used our 3D model, which simulates what the project looks like from the wind turbines all the way to the HVDC converter station, which was a great hyper local event. Ahead of that May 4th open house, we did do some door-to-door outreach in the neighborhood adjacent to Brayton Point in Somerset. And we also, as Kathleen mentioned, have an extensive website, which is available in 12 different languages that includes all of our permitting filings, fact sheets, FAQs, and more. So we try to go above and beyond when it comes to outreach.
You want me to take this one?
Sure.
Okay. Mayflower has and is continuing to conduct extensive engagement with the local fishing industry. We have a full-time fisheries liaison officer on our team who attends regular port hours in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and Port Judith, Rhode Island. We have contracts with fishing captains who conduct scouting trips before offshore surveys take place to scout out fishing gear that should be avoided. Mayflower is participating in a broader level, and with a BOEM process that will be concluding soon, that will develop a framework for a compensatory mitigation for impacts from wind on fisheries after the governors of 9 states jointly requested a federal process. Mayflower continues outreach to South Coast fisheries via direct communications, a fisheries representative relationship with the Massachusetts Lobstermen Association, the New Bedford Port Authority, Commercial Fisheries Center of Rhode Island, and regional collaborative efforts that Mayflower supports. We are beginning the fieldwork portion of the fisheries monitoring program that will address requirements for baseline monitoring. This is fall 2022. Fisheries monitoring work to study the movement of highly migratory species began in 2021 by supporting regional science efforts, conducting field work with SMAST and New England Aquarium and Inspire Environmental, utilizing existing data from state and other sources and investigating the potential for non-extractive survey techniques. Mayflower will develop a comprehensive baseline picture of fisheries resources in the project area. So there's a lot going on and a lot more to come. Did I miss anything? It's a lot to cover. Okay, next slide is our tribal outreach. I know Erin is on the line, and Erin and Kelsey have really been doing a lot with the tribes. We've been actively engaged with the tribes since 2019. At least 8 meetings, online streaming of geoarchaeological core openings during COVID, soliciting tribal input to survey and geoarchaeological coring plans and to review the results. And really impressive is the geoarchaeological core GIS map viewer for tribal historic preservation officers. And I know Erin did a demo on this, which was impressive. we have workforce development opportunities. We've done protective species observer career training for tribal members, and 2 of the graduates have already been on our vessels looking for protected species. You can see a picture in the lower right of one of the tribal graduates. They're, as you can see, they're now deployed on survey vessels, and they're very happy with this this undertaking. And then this is a listing of our ongoing engagement with the various tribes. Next slide. Environmental analysis. We have done robust environmental analysis, including extensive investigations and surveys, offshore and onshore, to guide us in siting the project. The project is siting planned and designed to avoid and minimize potential impacts, and where there are any adverse impacts that cannot be avoided will be minimized or mitigated. And a lot of this effort, a lot of these studies are covered or attached to our COP, our construction and operations plan, and many are summarized in our state filings. Next slide. Next slide gives you a snapshot of the extensive studies that have been done and some of the photos that have come from our survey vessels. Pretty exciting work. But again, these studies are attached to our federal construction and operations plan, which are available online. Some of them are, and they're summarized in and attached in our, or referenced in our state filings. Next slide. This presents a timeline of our project. We're still in the permitting stage. We don't expect to do onshore construction or begin onshore construction until 2024, until we have all our major permits. But again, we're a lot of our design figures in the state filings are at 30%. We are progressing, and we welcome feedback. We listen, and we incorporate it into our planning process. So it's very helpful having this engagement. Next slide. So this is, we're not going to go through this slide. You've already heard Jennifer mention the 2 MEPA thresholds in the beginning. This is just a snapshot of what's in the ENF, some of the resource areas that are involved, and a summary of the environmental justice populations within 1 mile. We just saw a snapshot of 5 miles. This shows 1 mile, where there are 14 EJ census block groups, mostly income and minority. And then as part of the EJ requirements, we completed a climate change adaptation and resiliency RMAT, which is attached to our, is an attachment to our ENF, which deals with sea level rise and extreme precipitation and storm surges, and that I won't go into the details, but the model does rate our project for ecosystem benefits. It scores it a high, a green high, a good high. Again, this is all in our ENF. It just gives you a snapshot. It's important to stress the main purpose of the project is to deliver clean energy and to combat climate change and to respond to the Massachusetts mandates for net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide. And Jennifer, I think this concludes our summary, our presentation, and this is just a snapshot of what Jennifer mentioned earlier. Jennifer, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, just a reminder that comments do need to be in writing, so you can email them to me. They don't need to be a formal letter. I will print email comments if you sent them as just an email message. You can also use the comment portal if you want to go there. My phone number is here, but please, again, comments in writing email is best.
Okay, and then our last slide just gives you a snapshot of what Kelsey mentioned earlier. You can see there's a scroll down of 11 different languages, Kelsey, where we have a lot of materials on our website, a lot of FAQs and fact sheets that we've developed and improved on based on all the outreach and engagement we've done, and refined it to address the concerns that we are hearing throughout the two projects that we're working on. So is it time for comments? If we can take some comments from the team, if people can, Jennifer, are we starting with people who are on the phone if they have comments or questions, and then going to the raised hands?
Yeah, if we could, if everyone could remain muted until you're called on. We have folks on the call who will look for raised hands. If you could limit your comments so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. We won't be timing, but do want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. Questions are welcome in the chat if you wish to use that function. Just ask that everyone is respectful, both of the presenters today and others on the call. And then I guess I would like to start with our state agency folks and local officials if they want to start off with comments, and then we can move to those who are on the phone and others who are on the virtual call here. So anyone from state agencies with questions or comments to start us off? I see Rebecca Haney's got her hand up. Thanks, Rebecca.
So my question is about the shoreline where you are going ashore at Brayton Point. Have you done an assessment of the coastal engineering structures there?
Do we have Tim on the line? Tim, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so are we specifically referring to sort of the reinforcements that are present there
Yeah.
at the landfall site in the sea to shore transition?
Yes.
We've done preliminary assessments, and I think we still we'll continue to review those as we continue to refine the engineering and the project. Though we do see the benefits of having those reinforcements in terms of the sort of resiliency of that piece of the coastline. We think based on the flexibility that we have with the HDD to alter the trajectory and get deep burial quickly, that we'll have the ability to go underneath those. Yes, but we still have detailed engineering to continue. Sorry.
Okay. My question was whether you were doing a detailed assessment as to whether it needed additional work given the age of the structures there.
Sorry, additional work. Maybe we can follow up on that, but additional reinforcement of the structures.
Yes.
To support.
To provide longer term shore protection.
Okay. Yeah, perhaps we can follow up on that one, Kathleen, if we take a note. I don't think that
I've
we've
got it.
seen anything yet in the resilience assessments to say that we do have to, but we can follow up on that.
Yeah, no, we will follow up. Thank you, Rebecca. Good
Okay.
comment.
Thank you.
All right. Any local officials on the call who wish to ask questions to start? All right. I know we had one caller. Do we still have a caller? If anyone who's on the phone wishes to speak, I know it can be the raise hand function is not available to you. Okay, others on the call? I see a Nicole McDonald.
Good afternoon, good evening. So as a resident of the Brayton Point neighborhood, and I understand sort of the technical side of it, but how, if at all, will this actually affect the residents in terms of noise or vibration, or how will it be perceived by the local residents?
So I think I can take a crack at it, and Kelly, you just let me know if I misspeak. I know we have done we've done noise assessments. The onshore export cables and transmission lines are not anticipated to generate noise, and I know there's a sensitivity about noise given the scrap metal operation. But we don't anticipate our export cables and transmission lines to generate noise. There will be a construction period, and Mayflower Wind intends to employ measures to reduce construction noise. And these measures may include temporary noise barriers or equipment silencers to be used at the HDD locations. And during construction, Mayflower Wind will require that the contractors comply with the Somerset Noise Ordinance. And there are various ways we can mitigate. I believe we also did a assessment of noise, potential noise at the proposed HVDC converter station, and they were the results, and these are included in our EFSB filing, but the results were that trying to find the results were not did not exceed the local decibel for industrial sites. I believe it's 70 decibels. But it was below that. And that's all contained in our noise assessment reports.
Thanks, Kathleen. I'm happy to add a little more color to, I appreciate the kickoff there. So I think the typical categories that folks tend to be interested in are noise, visual, and traffic considerations. And I think Kathleen touched on the noise portion, which is, it is a construction project in the style of standard utility projects. So there is going to be some excavation and some work to that end, and it's something we've looked at and done some initial construction evaluations, particularly for the HDD work. But once it's installed, the assets will be buried. They won't produce noise. It's the converter station will have electrical equipment that will produce noise during operation, and that's something that we've studied for the report to make compliance with the state and the local regulations. In terms of visual, I think Kathleen has a really good slide that gives a representation of the before and after the construction of the converter station. And due to the presence of that existing grassy hill that separates Brayton Point from the nearby neighborhood, we don't expect much of a visual impact at all. There's lightning protection masts, but those are quite thin and shouldn't be very visible. So that's not much of a consideration for this project. And in terms of traffic, the converter station will be unmanned. So during operations, no traffic produced, but during construction, you'll have some vehicles delivering equipment and doing the work on the site.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yes.
So beyond the noise and any visibility issues, are there any direct health concerns to residents either in the Brayton Point neighborhood or in Swansea, which is right on the other side, or Fall River, which has the environmental justice populations? Because I saw a little bit of reports regarding the concerns of residents in Rhode Island and in Falmouth. So are there health effects to this being cited at Brayton Point?
I guess what I would say there to kick us off, and others are certainly can chime in, is that what makes Brayton Point a great point of interconnection is that it does have a long history of having served the energy industry, and there are already existing utility assets on the site. So there's an existing substation, there are existing transmission lines. So what Mayflower will be constructing will follow the best practices of the industry, and it'll be in kind with what's already there. So from that perspective, I would say nothing new to the site.
But are there health effects? So I saw the concerns of residents in Rhode Island and the residents in Falmouth. So does this increase the health risks? Because the Brayton Point power plant has been decommissioned and dismantled. So are we now being put in that same position to have health effects from this project? And if so, what are the health effects?
So I guess I'm looking for the right specificity to answer your question, and I want to make sure I hit the key points. I think what's key to focus on is the transmission assets, and those are in kind with what's already there. So I would say no to the health effects question, but again, welcome feedback from others.
Yeah, I think number one, we haven't triggered any of the air hazardous waste thresholds for MEPA that would raise any red flags. Yeah, there's an existing transmission system already there. Our lines are going to be buried underground. Everything will be underground on private property. So I'm trying to think of what the concerns would be.
Kathleen, if I might jump in, Lawrence Mott, transmission manager, Mayflower.
Lawrence.
I think these are good questions, and I appreciate you bringing them up. Follow on from some of Kelly's remarks in that the HVDC, another reason why we use this versus AC is that it has less EMF. EMF, you have probably heard, whether it's just discussed in an article or other work that you're doing to research the potential impacts. So this is lower for our installation than any of the previous efforts. Following on, the N-Grid's interconnection gear will remain. It will be likely less, but generally the same as what was there with the coal plant. That is the electrical substation that you've seen when you've been in the neighborhood. Our cables are buried versus previously the coal plant had some overhead lines. So in general, we're all going in the lesser direction of any of those health concerns and any of the requirements or concerns on an international standard for HVDC is almost half of what it might be for a concern of AC. And I'd also just emphasize on the consideration of the remoteness in terms of a substation and where our facility is compared to the neighborhood around Brayton Point.
Yeah, and to picking up on what Lawrence just said, we've done EMF studies and we've brought in experienced EMF epidemiologists to review the results. And again, the cables are buried. I know at a recent hearing, which was recorded in Rhode Island, someone had raised the same concern about EMF, and the chairman remarked that these are buried cables and subsea cables, and they're going to dissipate quickly, and that's not going to be a concern. So I'm not sure. Yeah, we did cover this. We did study it. It's attached to our filings. So I agree with Lawrence. I don't see any EMF concerns, if that's what you mean on health concerns. If anything, we're going to improve things with reducing greenhouse gas emissions and combating climate change.
Yeah, so I appreciate you posting everything on the website. I'll certainly go back through that. And then if nobody else has any questions, I have an additional question, but I'll yield to the floor to give other people a chance.
Right, other questions from those on the call? All right, I'm not seeing any other raised hands. Nicole, if you want to continue with your questions. Thank you for being respectful to others.
No, thank you. So MEPA is also going through the process with the Prismium project, which is going to be 47 acres. of a manufacturing facility and a 600-foot tower. So that's going through the MEPA process right now. And now the Mayflower is going to be a 10-acre process. And I anticipate both of these projects are going to be entering the construction phase at the same time. So my question is twofold. Is MEPA going to be looking at that? So in other words, you're going to have Somerset, Swansea, and Fall River that are basically going to have construction going on 57 acres. And then the second follow-up is when both of these projects are up and running, if we're looking at the noise from, say, the Mayflower facility, is MEPA looking at the cumulative effect of having 70 decibels from Mayflower and then however many decibels that will be produced from the Prismium project? So is the cumulative effect of all that development being looked at, or are these being looked at in sort of a narrow focus? And if they are, I think they should be looked at cumulatively, because 57 acres being constructed at the same time down a narrow road to the Brayton Point facility is just going to be, and these aren't short-term projects. I mean, the construction periods are very lengthy.
I can say a little bit about that, Kathleen, if you want me to
Yeah,
start.
Kelly, we were just talking about that today.
Yeah, so I did have the chance to ask that question earlier today. MEPA does have a segmentation clause. It generally applies to proponents, who are proposing some kind of phased development either on their property. I am not sure how that applies to this project, but I will be asking. It was a question I had earlier today. Obviously, Mayflower Wind doesn't control the other project, but as it does serve common land, I do think it's a good question and one I will be looking into further. I don't have the answers as to whether it would be considered some kind of segmentation, since the project are distinct and different proponents, but it is a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, and Prismian's going to be at a separate area. They're going to be a manufacturing facility. They're proposing 277 employees and 233 parking areas and different apples and oranges, different process. Once we're constructed, we're going to be unmanned. You're not even our cables. It's going to be quiet. Our cables will be underground. It'll just be the unmanned substation at another area of the site. As you correctly mentioned, Nicole, that 10 acres much further away from Prismian, and practically zero employees. And it's a 300-acre site. I think we're certainly going to work and coordinate with Prismian in terms of traffic. If construction traffic is your concern, I think their traffic is going to be much more than ours, but we can certainly work through, how to best deal with our small amount of traffic compared to their massive traffic and make sure that it's not going to have an adverse impact on the communities on public roads. They're planning to work on the eastern side, the Taunton River side. We're planning our project largely on the western side. So, but we have been watching Prismium's ENF filing closely.
And I'll add one more thing to the point about noise from earlier as well. I just want to speak to the requirement that Kathleen cited with the 70 dBA for the Somerset regulation. Mayflower is going to actually be held to a stricter standard, and that's one set forth by the state. And that's an increase of no more than 10 decibels at the property boundary. So
good point, Kelly.
It is more stringent.
Yeah.
So I just on the decibel issue. So again, if it's 10 above baseline, when are we measuring the baseline? Are we measuring it during when the construction is going on for Prismium? So I just think this really has to be looked at globally, because you have one narrow road. And speaking for myself as a Somerset resident, the last 3 years have been very difficult. Don't get me wrong, Somerset, I think, is excited about Mayflower and about Prismium, but we want to make sure that any available protections are put in place for the residents. So it's got to be that balance, and that's all we're asking for.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. The baseline has to be the quietest period. It can't be, that's how you measure your ambient noise conditions is at the quietest time, and that's the baseline. Kathy Sousa. Hello.
Hi there. Sorry, I'm at a children's birthday party in the background, so I apologize. But I want to reiterate what Nicole is trying to express, that we could potentially have 3 businesses operating at the same time. So if CDC starts their business at the same time, that Prismium starts construction in Mayflower, I really do want to see a coordinated effort, because your noise added to their noise, added to, times 3. The standard in Somerset is not a straight 70 dB, it's 10 above ambient, right? So if our ambient right now on Monday morning is 45, and to say, okay, well, we won't go above 70, although Mayflower said they're going to stay less than that. The overall combination of all 3 businesses operating at once, we never had that before. We've always had just the coal yard in the past. So this is all new to the neighborhood. The potential to have 2 ships at one time is new to our neighborhood. I mean, there's a very good potential that we could have 2 ships loading. And I think that these reviews really need to be coordinated to look at the overall absolute highest noise level that this could potentially, with Commercial Development Corporation, Mayflower, and Prismium all operating at the same times. And that's our biggest concern. There's so much going on right now that it really needs to be looked at as one big picture. As far as truck traffic, as far as deliveries, as far as everything. I mean, if we look at this in a silo, we're going to find ourselves in trouble, I think.
That's a great comment, Kathy. I will take this back and look at it closely.
I appreciate it. And like Nicole said, I mean, we're all excited. We're happy for moving forward. I just want to make sure we're looking at the overall picture as a team, as neighbors. Yeah. To make sure that what's best for the neighborhood and the new neighbors and all operations that are going on. And not just for the neighborhood. I mean, I'm an avid kayaker in the water out there. I want to make sure that, we're looking at stormwater as an overall picture. We're looking at all of this as an overall. I think that
I'm hearing you as well, and I will definitely bring that back to the MEPA side of things to see what can be done about that type of coordination. I'm going to admit I'm fairly new to MEPA. I've only been here 7 months, but the segmentation piece is something we do take pretty seriously, and I can see that this might be a little bit different than that, but I'm certainly willing to raise that issue and have a discussion.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you letting us speak as well.
Great. Others on the call this evening with questions or comments? Kathleen, this will be posted also. This presentation from this evening will be posted on the website.
Yes.
And you've shared it with me as well, if anyone's looking for a copy.
Kelsey is vigilant about that, getting it up on our website.
Okay. Just having had the benefit of talking to you earlier today, I did raise concerns about resiliency of the project and the sort of time frame used to look at sea level rise and the intensity of coastal storms and those sorts of things. The project did sort of only estimate out only to 2050 and was using that number. I'm hearing from you that I think the RMAT tool might have spit back out a time frame longer than that. It's generally 2070. And so we do look very seriously at resiliency for the long term, because I think everyone knows this isn't a short-term project. Even if leases do run out, this is, energy I think the state of Massachusetts is going to be relying on for a long time coming. So I think if you want to take another look at that before before the end of the process, feel free, but if not,
We plan to. Yes, thank
Excellent.
you, Jennifer. We plan to.
I, again, don't have anything additional from our conversation earlier today. Kathleen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add sort of to wrap us up, or
Well,
I can-
or Kelsey, thank you so much. This is really great feedback. And Nicole and Kathy, we heard you loud and clear. We fully intend to coordinate, even though we are tenants, lessees on the CDC land. We do not own the land, and we cannot, control what Prismium does. What we want to do the right thing, and that is the plan, is to do the right thing and to ensure that we are being good neighbors.
Thanks for that,
Kelly.
Kathleen. I just want to say also that, this is the beginning of the MEPA review process. The comment period for this portion of the review does end on September 29th, and we will be issuing a certificate on October 11th. The next step in the process will be a draft environmental impact report. And so this process will continue to a final environmental impact report, at which point the project will move to permitting. So this is the beginning of a longer phase of review, and we hope you'll continue to stay involved in comments and questions. And I look forward to receiving any input you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Mayflower, for the presentation this evening.
Everyone be safe. Have a good night. Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Hi, Madeline and Bob. This is Jamie. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Jamie?
Good. Hey, thank you very much for your assistance and helping us through the presentation.
Anytime. It seems like the presentation went really well.
It did, and I appreciate your support and helping out on this. I guess I know it's getting late. We can always talk